To have a good harvest, one must plant good seeds and must also use the right kind of fertilizer. The carrots have grown large and firm. How good they will taste.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another non-Thursday Backyard Gardens episode. That's right. It's the conclusion, as far as we know, of our fall series. Batavia's meditating. She's got her hand hovering over the bell, but she's going to hit it right now. She almost missed it. So yeah, this is what we plan. We have the right to change our minds at some point, but this should be the end of the fall special series. So we are going to, I think, talk about something that could be very important. I think all of these are very important. I don't know why I keep saying that, but look, Emily writes from the Backyard Gardens Community Garden Facebook group, which you're more than welcome to be a part of, free of charge. Come see us, hang out with us. She asked a very good question. And straightforward, too. These are very straightforward questions. Beautiful. Things that can overwinter. Garlic, other bulbs, onions. I mean, Emily's got it going on here.
Hey, Emily.
So what we're going to do is we're going to try and break it down, and we're going to go... we'll talk about overwintering, and then we're going to do colder climates, warmer climates, and then we'll go from there. So we realize and we understand, as you know on this show, Batavia and I are in two separate climates. I'm in coastal North Carolina, and Batavia.
And I'm in Chicago, Illinois.
That's right.
Out in the Midwest.
In the Midwest, where it's cold. So, it's totally different the way that we both can grow and what we can grow and when, but there's still some things that you can overwinter in your garden, and arguably much longer than some people think. So we're going to try and break that down. But as usual, before we do it, remember, you can be a member of our show. You can be a subscriber and help support us, because look, I'm going to be totally transparent with you. We just found out that we're getting ripped off by our hosting company. So we would love to have a couple supporters join us. You can do it on Apple subscriptions or Patreon. You can buy seeds from us, and you can also get the Planter app to you. Use the link below for it and get yourself a heavy discount on it and enjoy that app because it's amazing. So, let's see here. What is overwintering? What's your definition? Let's make sure that we're on the same page.
Yeah, I think we could have done this before the
not as fun,
hitting record button, but here we are. So I describe overwintering as, actually, I have two versions of it. So overwintering, primarily, I look at it as something that you've planted at some point in, let's say, this current garden season, and you are going to, that plant is going to go dormant, and then that plant will resume its growth and produce in the next garden season.
Yes.
Right? So generally speaking, early spring for many of us.
Right. So you're not looking to get a harvest off of it during the winter. You expect it to hold over until it... Okay, hold on. We got to be very honest here. Not until spring, but until it starts to warm up in the spring.
Yeah. Yeah. The other version of it is I got a warm day and that kale plant, the leaves have thawed. And so now I'm going to go out and harvest them.
Yeah.
That's not really overwintering, not for the purpose of this conversation that we're having. That's just some leftover plants you're still enjoying. More or less, you've extended the season of that plant. I know. You see how I just walked around the definition we gave 2 episodes ago?
Yeah, you did.
I said extended the plant, not the season. Extended the plant. I'm just trying to keep you on your toes.
And overwintering too is it can be an accident, and it's okay if it's an accident. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like I think it's
the first times that I ever experienced overwintering, it was absolutely by accident. It was, and it's my favorite vegetable that's difficult for me to grow consistently, and that was spinach, right? I absolutely sowed it, forgot about it, and assumed that, it didn't come up. I guess I didn't forget about it. It didn't come up. And then guess what? The first thing, like the tulips are sprouting in my neighbor's yard. And then guess what? I have some leaves. As we were sitting and recording this podcast, I think I'm looking outside like, are those spinach? Those are spinach leaves. Get out of here.
Yeah. What is this quote?
Those are some of the best surprises.
What is that from?
It's from the Oregon State Extension. It's the kind of winter.
He hit the nail on the head. I mean,
yeah. Well, I mean, clearly that's the reason why I sent it.
So yeah, and actually, should I read it?
Yeah, you should read it.
Love
because
it when
we love when you read to us. It's story time.
Story time, everybody. Get your blankies, get your whoobies. Okay, so Jim Myers says, winter gardening is risky business. He's a plant breeder and a researcher at Oregon State. It may work one year with a mild winter, but not another when the weather is more severe. If you plant some cold hardy vegetables from mid-August to early October, depending on the crop, there is a good likelihood you will produce something on the other end of spring. And that's really good. Go ahead.
He finishes the last sentence I didn't copy.
Oh.
They say farming is a gamble, some years more than others.
Yeah, it really, I've been thinking about that a lot lately with this drought we're having. But it's true. Some years are going to be good, some years are going to be bad. And look, I know the Farmer's Almanac has those predictions, but look, have you read up on that? They are not. It's like a gimmick. You know what I mean? It's a crapshoot. There's percentages, and I think they come right. I believe I read last year was like 20% of the time they're accurate or something. So, but I like to read it just because it's like, I don't know what's going to happen in 8 months. So I get an idea. But I definitely have seen this been an issue. Knowing what I know about the West Coast, because this is where the whole zone thing really came into play for me. And we're going to talk about zones a little bit here. The West Coast, especially like Washington, Oregon, all that, it's a little bit different climate. They don't get necessarily as cold, but unless you're in the mountains or something. But they also don't get that heat until late in the summer. So it's it's a totally different world. But where you have a milder winter, there's one way to grow in the overwinter, and then in the colder seasons, colder places, it's totally different. So do you overwinter because we're going to go with colder climates first. Do you overwinter over in your cold climate?
I've only attempted to overwinter, again, spinach is hit the buzzer.
Right.
That's the only thing I've attempted to overwinter as a part of a plan.
And let me ask you this. What do your mild winters look like?
Mild winters we don't get below 0, but we'll have very common days of like multiple days in the teens.
Days, not nights.
Oh yeah, days. Yeah. So
okay.
The high, that's such a good distinction. The high for us across multiple days could be in the teens. So if you look at a 3-month period, right?
And that's the warm season or a warm warm winter.
Yeah, that's a warm winter,
Man,
right?
I stuttered through that one. I'm sorry, everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks for hanging in with us.
We're going to end this last one with it's going to be a banger. So, Chicago, Illinois, winters are always going to get below 20 degrees as a high.
Right.
The high is always going to be below 20 degrees. A warmer winter would be, even if we get to the point of like in the teens as our high, it's going to dip below that into the single digits for your lows, right? Colder winters are clearly going to be where we have bouts, days and days of our highs are in the teens.
Right.
Excuse me, our highs are in the single digits. We have a handful of days sprinkled in where our highs are below 0.
Okay.
So that's the more, kind of frigid part of, let me pull out my computer to see what place I can move to. Where's that change.org petition?
Yeah, sign that change.org petition. No. And it's important to recognize that, because if we go what our new buddy Jim says, Mr. Myers, whatever.
Jimmy is normally, I call him Jimmy.
Jimmy. What up, Jimmy? He's probably listening. He's like, my name is not Jimmy. You know,
when he was a young man, they called him Jimmy.
Yeah. It's a distinction about what you can overwinter and what to expect, you know? And so when you overwintered spinach, you said that it did come back.
Yeah. So my intentional overwintering of spinach, I lost last year. I lost a lot of the plants coming in because I didn't do anything but plant the seeds and let them go. We had what's now become almost unusual. Well, according to our garden zone, the perennial zone, we're getting, I think it's 10 below. That's the lowest temps that we'd be getting. And
average.
We basically got that. You know, we got probably around 5, 6, 7 degrees below zero. And I think that had a real impact on that spinach. Some of the plants, maybe like 4 or 5, survived.
Right. Other
winters where I've accidentally overwintered spinach, it's just, you know, I've had that small narrow bed in the front yard the entire bed was full of spinach, probably like 20 different plants that just came up because I planted it in the fall and didn't have enough time for it to do much.
Yeah, so it's important to realize the distinction here. We're not talking about Batavia harvesting spinach. We're talking about spring temperatures start to come, the snow melts, and all of a sudden a spinach plant pops up, eliminating you, the gardener, having to go out and plant. I don't consider garlic an overwintering plant because it's a planned coming in and then harvesting. It's just like that's the way garlic is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I don't do that cold stratification, similar to a lot of your bulb plants for flowers and things.
Yeah, bulbs are typically planted in the fall. Some of them are in the spring, but yeah, exactly. And onions the same way. I mean, short day onions. I mean, this is directly from the question from Emily, but short day onions, I guess technically you could call that overwintered, but we planted them so that they could continue to grow and not miss any grow days when it starts to warm up. So, you know, there is that. Do you think you could overwinter anything else in your garden like this year if you were like, hey, this is the year? And include in your, we'll talk about protection at the end. So if you were to put protection in, is there anything that you think you could overwinter? Because in your climate, in the colder climate, what we're really talking about is survival.
Yeah, I think there's it's called corn salad is the nickname. It's Mach, M-A-C-H-E. It is super hardy, and I have very similarly planted it. Well, seeded it, I should say, direct sowed it, got the beginnings of the plant, and then I'm going to still say returned in the spring. Right. You know, so a lot of these things I've read about people that are overwintering things, you need some level of growth before you get to the part of dormancy.
Right.
Right. You know, so that's the reason why I don't look at something like garlic as being overwintered, because you're basically burying this thing. And generally speaking, you don't necessarily want that growth before, you know, you hit your winter. It's not the end of the world if you get it. But yeah, so Mach is one. I could probably overwinter, maybe. Yeah, no, I was going to say arugula. Gosh, I'll have to look it up. I think that's probably it.
Kale?
Not many more.
I would think you'd want to look at your super hardy plants. So for you, like kale.
I've done it for kale accidentally too.
Collards?
I stumble into all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, this is the distinction. So if you overwinter it, does it prematurely go to seed? Right? So
yeah,
I've had kale basically grow a few leaves in the fall, then get to, you know, it dies back, puts on new leaves in the spring, and it's going to bolt. But you know, and I know that I could plant kale in the spring and it takes me all the way through the growing year. Right. You know, so, and I think it's still worth it. You know, I'm very cool with it. I have this dream and vision of beds, plural, full of spinach in the spring that I worked for that previous year. I've been working that previous year. Like that's been a vision. We are probably on year 3 for that. And so, yeah, still a vision.
Yeah. And so thinking about it, it's, you know, if you add protection to it, you can kind of minimize the shock to the plant. And hopefully the goal here, which we'll get into in a few minutes, is to curtail the bolting mechanism within that plant. For warmer climates such as myself, a warmer winter for me is 60s during the day, lots of 50s during the day, more than a handful of 70s. And then at night, 25 typically would be the lowest that we would get. And we may get that repeatedly, but it would not get much colder than that. A cold winter, we would be, 11, 12 degrees for probably about a week at night. And then we'd barely get out of the 30s for maybe 2-3 weeks. And then after that, it kind of warms back up. But we can definitely, our average temperatures are generally low 20s at night, and then 40s during the day for about a month straight, 6 weeks. And so what that looks like for me, overwintering with no protection whatsoever would be cabbages, mustard greens, cilantro, collard greens, sometimes turnips, and then Brussels sprouts, and I think that's about it. So you'll see in my garden that these things will be very prevalent because I don't have to do a lot to them. Now, if I add protection, the protection is, let's say, broccoli or something like that. But for me, the protection is different because that's helping it to continue to grow, trying to outrun the overwintering process. And, because if I plant my broccoli about mid-January to February 1st, and then my cabbage is probably around the same time. So if I don't get them out by then I'm planting something already to get for the spring harvest. So it's kind of this weird balance. You know what I mean? Like I got very little time before I kind of cross out of the overwintering section. But even still, I'll do that. Like this year, my goal is to plant cabbage, harvest it at around Christmas-ish time, and then have some that will overwinter. I typically overwinter cabbage every year, and it shocks me because I will sit there and I'll be like, dang, they're not going to grow. They're not going to grow. And next thing you know, I've got a head of cabbage. Now, I will say this. There are losses. Every year, there are losses within these beds. It may not be a lot. It may be a lot, but I will lose some of the plants. So I think it's just like you said, it's how fast does it mature? How mature is it when that cold finally gets there? And what kind of protection have I put on it?
Yeah. And so, I shared the story before, the time I planted a cabbage plant, transplant in the garden. I'm going to say August or September, in a shady spot, didn't grow much, came back. So I overwintered it. All the leaves are flat and looked dead. Put on new leaves come spring, late winter, early spring, the following year, and it immediately bolted. When I say immediately, it wasn't like leaves and then the next day, but it didn't even begin, the leaves didn't even begin curling. So again, could have been that particular winter, that fall going into winter, and then winter going into spring. But I look at something like for my area, I'm hard pressed to see if those heading crops could actually be overwintered. If y'all have some experience with it, if you're in a climate similar to mine, please do share over on the Backyard Gardens Community Garden Facebook page.
Yeah, definitely let us know. And if anybody has done any overwintering, definitely go over there and let us know. Because there's a lot of options, and it just depends on where you are and how cold you get. Now, I want to spend a little bit extra time on protection, because the question that I have written down in the notes here is, what can protection do for this? So in like Batavia's situation, I just want to double check. You have not tried to overwinter anything under protection. Is that correct?
I feel like I'm like the absent-minded professor or something, the absent-minded gardener. Yeah. So there have been a couple of seasons where I've covered my raised beds with plastic.
Right.
I've had things growing underneath, coming into fall and winter, covered them with plastic. uncovered them that next spring and got some early surprises for some things that return. Back to the spinach, back to the match. I think some kale.
Okay.
Because kale, in addition to it, kind of just obviously growing from a single seed, it'll play around. If it falls over, it'll root itself.
Yeah.
You'll have another set of plants growing. So what that does, no doubt, is it gets me to a harvestable leaves faster.
Right.
And we know it's a short window of time I'm going to have to enjoy those vegetables anyway. It definitely, obviously, leads to my soil warming up faster too.
Right. Yeah, because and I asked you that because, and when you say under plastic, you had it under hoops, right?
Yeah, I used low tunnels, PVC pipe hoops, covered with like 6 millimeter regular home improvement store plastic, not greenhouse plastic.
Yep, exactly. And so the reason why I wanted to bring it up is because protection for Batavia in a colder climate is different than protection for me in a warmer climate. One thing it does for sure, and it comes with challenges, is one thing that it's going to do is it's going to basically not let the snow get on it. Yep. So, you'll have to kind of clean it off a little bit, the snow, so the light can get in, but it'll keep it warmer during the day, and you will be shocked by how much warmer it can get. It can be 17 degrees, and if the sun's hitting it, it can be above 32 easily during the day. But at night, that temperature is going to drop down almost even with what it is outside, maybe a degree or two less or more, excuse me. So that's a big difference. But what it's doing is it's keeping the frost off of those plants too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the and general rule of thumb, if you're using some type of plastic cover versus a frost cover, which is a different material, generally speaking, with a regular row cover for frost and cold weather, you don't want that to come in contact with the plants.
Right.
There's a level of burn that happens with that. The plastic for me, if it goes onto the garden bed, it stays on there until I could shovel my way to the bed. It's going to be February, March before I even think about going under there. Right. And for you, your plants would burn up if you left the plastic
easily,
on those plants and not removing it for those months, December, January, February.
Yeah. No, remember this, you're going to need to water underneath that. If you leave it on, I'm not talking to you. I know you know that, but in general, the rain won't get to it because it's covered, the snow, whatever. So you've got to kind of keep that in mind. You may have to add water to it, but it's a difference. And then so keeping it warmer at night, you can put buckets of water in there, and then it'll radiate small amounts of heat out. It's not going to do anything crazy. I've heard of people putting the old school incandescent Christmas lights in there at night, and that will radiate heat out and keep it a little bit warmer. So there's a lot of options you can do, but what that does is if you keep it warmer at night, then the shock's not as bad when it warms up during the day. But during the day, it warms it up faster, and it allows that plant to recover. So if you leave it out there and you leave it covered, you may want to check on it every once in a while. You get a warm day, get out there and look at it. It gives you something to do. For me, it's a totally different process. It's an on-off, 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 on-off all winter long. I'll put my row covers out there and may only use them 3 times. But they're out there and they're ready for when I need them. And what I do, and really in all climates, is if you're going to get a frost, and then it's going to warm up right after that, because a lot of times it'll do that no matter where you are. You can put that cover on and it'll be like it never got a frost on that plant. So you're kind of tricking it, and then you take it off if it warms back up. And so you're really extending, that plant has suffered no shock from frost landing, growing on that plant, and really keeping a little bit warmer. So it works out well in that manner.
Shout out to my container garden people. I'm looking back. It was March 2021, early March at that I had containers inside of a raised bed sitting on top of the soil, and it was plastic on top of the hoops. Because the soil basically freezes, right? I didn't do any watering over those winter months. And so at the beginning of March, we're just headed into spring, and I'm looking at, new growth that had put on underneath that plastic. So
of what?
Whatever moisture that was in that soil basically kind of came back alive, if you will, once it thawed.
Right.
And I'm uncovering it, and I do see some browning of some leaves, and that's, a combination of limited light based on me not using the greenhouse plastic and instead just regular plastic, and then also probably the heating up, cooling down. So I'm looking at pictures from that year in February. I was outside like with a jacket on, and I don't roll like that. So it was a warmer late winter, spring, early spring.
And so bolting is another thing that we have talked about. And these covers can actually prematurely cause plants to bolt, because what it's doing is it's telling it like, hey, I've gone through this many cold, hot cycles. Clearly, I've been growing for more than a year. It's time for me to make my seed. And so what you can do is really need to be on top of like venting your, your structure. And venting, depending on the day, it can be taking it off all the way. It could be lifting the plastic up halfway. It could be propping a brick up underneath it. If you're going to be 32 degrees during the day, 30 degrees during the day, you prop a brick underneath it, it's still going to be 40 degrees in there. Mm-hmm. You close it, it'll be 60 degrees in there. So it makes a huge difference. So, you can do multiple levels of getting that fresh air in there, because you can also get mold and stuff that grows in there as the stuff gets hot and cold. So you don't really want to mess around with that too much.
I was afraid that I'm going to open the plastic up and it's going to be an animal in there. Like, really not happened to me, but I am afraid of that. If you're doing a more traditional cold frame that has like a plastic top or a glass top, that venting, it's going to heat up much more than even what I'm doing with my low tunnels. That venting is going to be critically important, I believe, for a lot of us, including myself. It is easier to kind of see what's going on there. And you still, again, run that risk of that plant bolting while it's still sitting under cover. And the only thing I haven't thought of and hadn't had a desire to overwinter would be lettuce. Just as kind of one of those like, oh, it makes sense. I could have fresh lettuce. And I
don't think it'll overwinter. It's way too sensitive.
I don't think so either.
But I will tell you that by me putting the low tunnel over the lettuce, that I can prolong that. I prolonged the harvest this year 2 months into my last frost date. So repeated frost and even frost afterwards. We've talked about it multiple times, but I was very surprised. And look, when I had to go harvest, I had to cut away the gunky, brown stuff. But when I was doing my cut and come again around it, I was getting plenty of leaves that were just fine. The trick was you put the cover on, and then you come out there in the middle of the day and you harvest it when it's nice and warm out there, late in the afternoon or something. But it definitely makes a big difference. And, I did a couple things last year. I think I put a bucket of water in, and I was able to raise the temperature like a degree or two on top. So I was up to total like maybe 2 to 3 degrees above what it was outside. But you got to remember, you're getting significant heating within that. So you can use all of these structures to your benefit. The one with the glass top, like you said, I would love to have glass tops over my beds. It'd have to be some kind of weird structure. But those make a lot of heat and retain more heat than the plastic. But, that plastic's so cheap and lasts for years if you take care of it. It's definitely worth a shot. You can get a roll of it for probably, $15-20. And then the PVC pipe, is it more than that? Well, for me, it's not. I'm not getting a stick of plastic, so
not a stick of it's plastic, and the size roll as well.
Yeah.
So in my local stores, there. I can't think of off the top of my head the size, but they're not giving you 20 feet. You got to buy more than that. It's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
The other thing that I overwinter, but I don't recommend, but it kind of just happens, is weeds. Yeah. In all seriousness,
well,
any of this protection that we're adding to it,
fire for weeds. It's a shocker what you'll get.
Party all the time.
Yeah.
Party all the time.
Yeah, and that's another reason to get out there and kind of vent those and get in there and work in them a little bit and do it. But you can. So the moral of the story is there's a lot of things that you can overwinter. You need to set your expectations and understand what overwintering means, and then how to, protect it accordingly. So different levels of protection. So on closing, I use 3 mil plastic. Batavia uses 6 mil plastic. So the thickness will retain more heat. I don't need to retain that much heat. If I put 6 mil plastic on, it's very likely I'll cook my plants during the daytime. So I don't want to go out and harvest steamed spinach. I want to steam it myself. So that's it, man. That is the fall. I don't know what we're going to call this, whatever it is, the fall series. I hope this information got out in time and you can apply it within your gardens like you need to and you feel so desired to do so. If you haven't had a fall garden, please think about it. You will truly enjoy it and you'll learn a lot about how your plants grow. And I think the important thing too that I get out of growing in the fall, especially when I first started, was I learned how resilient plants really are in the climate. And it taught me as well how much of a wimp I am when it comes to cold. You know what I mean? Like, I'm serious. You take a lettuce plant that's filled with water and you stick it out there in 28-degree weather and it's fine. But I'm not going to sit out there all night in 28-degree weather. I'd be miserable. I'd be cussing my wife out time I open the door. So, it's a good exercise and it'll help you because you won't be as nervous in the spring planting earlier, which I think we should all practice in our gardens. I'm a firm believer in that, and it's a mantra of mine in the gardens: plant earlier. So I hope that you guys have found this useful, and we really hope that you'll come buy some seeds. You'll become a subscriber, and then hook up our boys at the Planter app and get yourself that discount and plan your garden. It is fall planting season, and you need to plan that garden. So get the Planter app. It's the PLANTER app, available on the Google and Apple Play stores. And until next time, everybody, remember, no matter what season is, spring, summer, fall, winter, we're going to learn to grow and grow for change.
See ya.
Now you know why people feel like celebrating at harvest time.
All over the world, people have feasting and good times when the crops have been gathered in.
Well, we hope you enjoyed the show, and thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to support the show, you can do so by checking out our seed shop below. We have all kinds of seeds available for you, and we're going to be adding new seeds shortly, so check that out. Get yourself some seeds. It's free shipping, over $35 orders. So go ahead, get a full garden. What are you waiting for? Order your seeds and stock up. Or you can become a subscriber. You can either be an Apple subscriber or a patron, and that will help support the show. You'll get one free episode every month, an extra episode, that is. So we definitely would love to see you over there and become part of our crew. Join the Backyard Gardens community garden in Facebook. That's free. Go ahead, join that, and join the community where all the listeners get together and they can help each other out with their trials and tribulations and just show off their gardens. There's not a better way to do it. And if you're curious about what's going on in our gardens, you can check out our individual YouTube channels. So I'm at Sandy Bottom Homestead, and Batavia is at Be Better Garden. You can check that out and see how each of us are growing and what we talk about on those, because a lot of times we will coincide with the podcast and help add information in that maybe we didn't get out in the show or we feel that's pertinent at a certain time of year. So check that out and enjoy seeing our gardens and what we do in them. And we have an Amazon store which has all the products that we use and recommend in our gardens, and it helps support our show. And we also add to this list periodically, so be sure to check it out periodically to see if there's anything that you need for your garden. Everything that you do, including a like and a subscribe and even a review, will help us learn to grow and grow for change.
See ya.